Hello world, my name is Atticus and welcome back to the experiment. Let's take a look at some of the bugs present in Final Fantasy II and do a bit of armchair theorizing. In some particular order, let's start with the 0 HP bug. Typically, when you go into a battle and one of your characters has 0 HP, they appear dead on the ground. And out of battle, a dead character cannot be healed without first reviving them. With the 0 HP bug, however, neither of these apply. To trigger it, you simply need a character to leave the party at 0 HP and then eventually rejoin. You also need to be on the NES version. This bug, like most of the others on this list, has been fixed in the later releases. While in effect, the 0 HP bug allows you to heal a dead character with any old potion, and in battle they can take exactly one action. On their next turn, the game will recognize that they are dead if they haven't been healed past 0 HP, and the 0 HP bug will be resolved, with them attaining the knocked out status. So what's going on here? I imagine it has to deal with when the game checks for a state change. Usually a character does not spontaneously die. They have to take damage first. After damage is calculated, the game checks to see if the character has run out of HP, and if not, then they can keep on keeping on, but if they have, then they get the KO status. This works most of the time. So when a character joins the party, there's no need to check if they've died because they haven't taken damage, except in the very specific instance of either Gordon or Layla. Both of these characters do a couple of stints in the player party, and rather than return them at full health, the game keeps them as you left them. Probably easier that way. But it does mean that if they were knocked out, then they'll be returned at 0 HP. But with the KO condition cleared. Since they're not KO'd, they can interact with the world like normal, despite their noted lack of health. As to why they die on turn 2, that I'm not entirely sure of, but my guess is that every turn after the first one checks the HP of the party to account for something like poison damage doing a character in outside of an attack proper. Next up is the dual wield bug. This one makes me glad I didn't play the game on the NES because very simply the dual wield bug is a lie. When you have a character dual wielding, the game only calculates damage for one weapon, even though it plays the animation for both. I love having a dual wielding character in these old Final Fantasies. The best defense is a good offense after all, but other than a slightly longer attack animation, there was no benefit on the original NES release. As to why, the damage calculation has to be assuming a character only has one weapon. So after it calculates damage for one weapon, it wipes its hands clean and calls it a day, while the animation code is deep in the mines, playing both animations. While Final Fantasy I and 4, oddly enough, were rife with errors surrounding equipment, like weapons that were supposed to deal more damage to a specific enemy type not having any additional effect, 2's original release only has 2 defective pieces of equipment. The healing rod should be a great weapon against undead due to being filled with restorative power, which is anathema to the Final Fantasy undead, but while it does deal damage, it does also still heal them. And Ripper, a knife that is supposed to deal a flat extra 20 damage per hit, simply doesn't do that. While we've only covered Final Fantasy I so far, this is honestly pretty tame as far as Final Fantasy equipment goes, especially this early on. We have some good old-fashioned overflow bugs up next. Evasion, HP, and MP can all overflow, and if you're unfamiliar with what that means exactly, it's when a number gets so high that the game rolls it back over to 0. Think about a stat that's supposed to be between 0 and 9. In normal gameplay, if they never expected to get higher than 9, then the game will only check that one digit. But if you manage to game the system and get your stat up to 10, the game would just see that miraculously high number as 0. That's effectively overflow, but computers think in binary, so in effect, you get your evasion up to 255 or 11111111 in binary, and then add 1, which would be 256 decimal or 1 00000000 in binary. But since the game is only saving 8 bits of data, it only sees 00000000. HP and MP work the same way, but they get another byte and additional funkiness. The caps are supposed to be 9,999 HP and 999 MP, and the game won't display any more than that, but both can actually go all the way up to 65,535, because the game allocates 2 bytes or 16 bits. Add any more, and the value goes back to 0. While 2 was good on equipment bugs, there are still quite a few spells that don't quite work as they're supposed to. Aura won't grant any extra bonus at level 8, Barrier won't protect against ice at level 8, Dispel just doesn't work at all, Protect is a very selfish spell that only affects the caster, Sap does little to MP values over 256 because it's checking the first MP byte, so like with the overflow glitch, after a certain point it rolls back to seeming like very little. Slow can properly glitch the game out. Slow works by reducing the number of hits a character does in an attack, and if the number of hits Slow reduces an attack by is equal to the amount hits they were going to do, the character tries to do a 0-hit attack, and unexpected zeros are never good. It doesn't seem like it'll crash or soft lock a game, but it seems that just about anything can happen. Likely the 0-hit gets the game looking at a memory location it really shouldn't be digging into, and whatever happens depends on what happens to be in that memory location at the time. Anything from slight visual nonsense to massive damage and any and all status conditions the game can throw at you. Back to the more low-key bugs. Ultima is supposed to get stronger as you master more magic, but it doesn't, and will do just 500 damage even at max level. Compare that to the Bloodsword, which can 2-shot the final boss at max level. And finally, Wall doesn't block Toad, Warp, Break, or Death for monsters. It works for the player party, and monsters can't actually cast Wall, but more than just not blocking the spells, a monster protected by Wall, targeted by one of these spells, will just disappear. Which does make it a very useful glitch since you can cast Wall on the monsters. I'm not sure what's going on here, but since no monsters can cast Wall, and there's no real expected benefit to casting Wall on a monster, it feels like the game resolving an unexpected situation by throwing it out the window. The middle character target bug is honestly something I'd call a feature if they didn't fix it in later releases. In the original NES release, again like everything else on this list, the middle 2 party members get targeted more often than the top and bottom ones, and if you put one of those middle characters on the back row, then the one still on the front row will take as many hits as all the other characters combined. It's a bug that baffles me. Usually, whether or not I'm right, I can think of something that would explain it. Ripper doesn't deal an extra 20 damage. It's a unique weapon with a unique effect. Maybe they just forgot to implement it. Your evasion gets too high and now you're being hit by everything under the sun. Overflow. I've got nothing for this. Considering the second half where a front row character gets hit much more, it seems that there are weights to who the enemies will target. Prioritize front row enemies, for instance. So maybe something incorrectly weighted the middle characters, and then couple those two together and you've got yourself a volunteered tank. The Peninsula of Power makes a return in Final Fantasy II, though it's more of a beach this time. The game divides the overworld into different regions, and those regions contain a list of monsters you can run into while in that zone. The Peninsula of Power in the first game was a small peninsula that jutted out from an early game zone into a late game one, allowing you to power level early so long as you could handle the higher level monsters. To the south of Altair in 2 is a beach with similar properties, allowing you to fight Mysidian enemies early. Finally, we have the target cancel action bug. Final Fantasy II is rather infamous for its leveling system involving using a skill in order to level it up. There's a bit more math behind the scenes and enemy tiers and a bunch of other nonsense, but if you're not trying to power level Furion's sword skill to 16 so you can cheese everything with the blood sword, an incredible weapon which deals your sword skill out of 16 damage to everything it touches, so half health at level 8 and all health at level 16. You don't really need to know all the specifics to enjoy the game and progress as intended, but if you do want a power level and you're on an older version, you can target cancel action. By selecting an action for a character, attacking an enemy, or casting a spell, you can then immediately cancel the action and select it again as much as you want. The experience was seemingly gained at the time when you select the action, but so long as you don't confirm your party's moves by having the last character in your party select the move, the party never actually commits to anything. So you can gain as much experience as you can stand to alternate between pressing A and B for. There are a few more bugs to this game, but I either don't know what they mean, like the party magic target bug, which I guess raises Furion's spirit by 8. There's some overlap between magic defense and spell targeting, but I'm not sure what's going on with it. There's also the shield attack bug, which seems like an attempted fix for the dual wield bug, as it's only present on the GBA version. If a character is holding a shield, they'll try to hit with it, but a shield does no damage. It makes it look like you've done more hits than you did, so damage may seem a bit low, but I don't think anything egregiously wrong is happening. And finally, the resize bug, a pixel remaster exclusive. If you change your monitor's display resolution, the game will reset the map you're in and potentially put the game in an unplayable state by transporting the party to some default coordinate not necessarily accessible in normal gameplay. You can get the map back in working state by loading an autosave. I believe this helps in item duplication and sequence breaking, but I was primarily focused on bugs in the original release, so I haven't looked too much into this. And that's everything. I'd like to thank the good people who managed the Final Fantasy Wiki for cataloging all of these so well. It makes a video like this almost distressingly easy to make. I feel like I'm stealing work. I do add commentary, potential explanations for bugs that don't seem to have one, and read it out on a site that's not fandom, so I think there isn't a value add to justify it, but if fandom ever becomes a usable site, I may have to drop the series. With that, I have been Atticus, and thank you for participating.